So finally, episode 2 of Goblin Slayer is here, and with it, it takes a different approach, something honestly I did not quite expect with episode 2. Now, as we all know by now, episode 1 of Goblin Slayer has got the community in a firestorm. Everybody is talking about it, talking about the good, talking about the bad. There is just a whole lot of debates and discussion about Goblin Slayer since the first episode aired last weekend. And with episode 2's arrival, I expect once again heavy debates and discussions on this series, people saying you're a bad person for watching it, yada yada. Just the typical usual that you would probably see in the anime community, manga community, or whatever. But if there's one thing we can get out of all of these debates and discussion and all that, it's at the very least, it's good to know that Goblin Slayer has definitely gained itself a reputation. Even if it is a bad reputation, it has gained a reputation. So, it's definitely going to be one of those series that's going to be relatively popular from fall of anime 2018. But to get on topic, though, this episode takes a different approach compared to the first episode. The first episode, it wanted to set the premise, the presentation of the series, what to expect, how the goblins were, Goblin Slayer coming in and just slaughtering them like the Doom Slayer. That's what the first episode was about, to show how dark this series really can get, which got everybody up in an uproar because of what happened. But basically, the first episode, it just wanted to introduce the setting and the characters. Episode 2 takes a different direction, and what it tries to do is tell Goblin Slayer's story through the eyes of everyone else around him. Which, the last time I really saw something like this, I think it was actually when I remember Guts after the Golden Age. How people used to view Guts, and you used to get some characterization from Guts through the eyes of everybody else that viewed him, because he looked like a monster. He looked like this evil dude, or whatever. He looked like someone you couldn't get around. And that's kind of what I'm reminded of. I'm reminded of what happened to Guts after the Golden Age in this episode of Goblin Slayer, because one quick look at what goes on within this episode, it's very obvious that the Goblin Slayer, he's isolated, he's lonely, he has nobody, people make fun of him, they put him down for what he does, but in reality, they don't truly understand what the man is really doing, and it's a very interesting episode, a powerful episode to really show what type of person Goblin Slayer is without him outright saying what type of person he is, because normally when it comes to character development or characterization, the character, they have to, give the details themselves. But we didn't really get that. It was actually, when we did get details from the Goblin Slayer throughout the episode, he actually just did these subtle little gestures or movements that kind of gave us insight to his psyche and what type of person he really was. One scene that stood out to me was when he went up to the front desk and he asked about any quest for goblin slaying. And then eventually he found out that there was an adventure group that apparently went after goblins to take them down. And it was a porcelain group, there was 3 people, and he asked about them, like what was their group consisted of and all that, and he was basically asking the person at the counter about it. And overall, he's like, okay, it seems like they have a very decent group and all that, and then he decides to go to another quest. And the girl that we saw introduced in the first episode, the girl that was a part of the first adventure group that got completely destroyed, she's like, whoa, they look even worse than us, like, they have less members and all that, and you're just gonna let them go by themselves, you're not going after them. He's like, hey, if you want to go after them, that's what he was basically saying. But the point is that Goblin Slayer, the reason why he didn't want to go after that adventurer group is because he had faith that everything would be okay. That's why he asked in the first place. He asked in the first place to see if they were okay. And because of information he kind of slightly gathered from that brief conversation with the person at the desk, he realized that they were not in any immediate danger. So he's like, okay, I'll go on to other quests that are very serious. So the girl that's now traveling with him didn't really understand that. He did show compassion, he did care about them, but he just did not say it. So that showed a little bit of into his character, what type of person he is. He does go out of his way to save people, adventure groups that are in danger, but sometimes obviously he cannot make it, but he will try if he can. So it does show he's not a bad person. Number two, we also see how the man constantly checks the village every single morning. It's a constant routine. Every time he is there, he will check the village for footprints, for goblins, and check the fence to make sure it's okay. If the fence is not okay, he will fix it. Which also shows that the man is very dedicated. It might look like he's controlled by something, he's possessed by something, but the man is just looking out for everyone in the village because he doesn't want to see bad things happen to them, which I will get into the Goblin Slayer's backstory in a moment. But the big point is that there's these little subtle gestures throughout the episode that give a little bit of insight to Goblin Slayer's character. And even at the end when he's like, I guess, I'm not really showing how I'm, a silver ranked adventurer and all that. Basically, how good he is, it's really hard to display himself because he's just a Goblin Slayer, which let's get into that. The public opinion of Goblin Slayer. Much like how the entirety of the community got in an uproar and all that about what Goblin Slayer is about and how the story was depicted in the first episode, we get to see kind of something similar, not as extreme, but similar to where everybody is just straight up putting the Goblin Slayer down. See, the man, as we know, he legit is called Goblin Slayer because he's going around killing goblins. He kills a selective species, and he's annihilating them. And as I talked about in my first impressions, the only way for someone to do something like this is a couple of reasons. Either A, he has some form of deep hatred within him for a certain species, and he's went out of his way to get rid of them. Something really bad had to happen to him. Or B, he gets a lot of money from it. Maybe he's greedy and he would get a lot of money from it, and that's why he's doing it. Maybe there's a lot of money to be made in goblins. But if it's not that, maybe it's some form of rare item drops or something. Maybe you can get a rare item. That's what you could kind of assume when it comes to someone that's called like a certain slayer, like a dragon slayer. Someone that's called a dragon slayer hunting down dragons because maybe they want their scales to be able to sell them. They want to be able to make armor from them, whatever. So that's kind of the point of why someone would get a slayer title. In this case, it made me question, why did he receive that title? And as we know, it's pretty obvious. He received it thanks to some form of hatred within inside him. He absolutely loathes the goblins. He cannot stand them whatsoever. And everybody around him, everybody in the Adventurers Guild and all that, they make fun of the man. They put him down. He's like, oh, look at his armor. Like, it looks like low-tier armor. It's like a porcelain adventurer has better armor than him. They're like, oh, he looks horrible. He's really a silver rank adventurer and all that. Like, whoa, the qualifications to be able to get there, it must not be that high. Everybody was just basically putting the man down left and right, making him feel like absolute garbage. Obviously, the Goblin Slayer didn't say anything. He sat there, did his own thing, and even if it did bug him, we didn't really get to see any emotions because obviously he's wearing armor, but we didn't really see any body gestures if he was uncomfortable. It seems like overall, he's very used to being isolated, lonely, nobody really understanding the reason to why he does these things. And I think the person at the desk, the person that's the desk girl, she explained the situation perfectly. She explained that everybody, could go off and become dragon slayers, do these fantastic jobs that are, crazy, beautiful, epic, whatever. But there needs to be someone that could get rid of the low-tier monsters. And obviously, even though goblins are technically low-tier monsters, they're not relatively that strong in the grand scheme of things. They are still creatures, these vile creatures that people kind of, misunderstand. They don't truly understand how dangerous they really can be, and so they just, brush them off as like, oh, just leave it for the weak, adventurers to handle. But in reality, we got to see what happens if weak adventurers try to handle goblins in the first episode. And that is where Goblin Slayer comes in. He is someone that truly understands the horror, the horrific nature of goblins and how awful they really can be. And so, it's kind of like this. In this society we live in today, nobody wants to probably be a plumber. No one wants to be able to, mess with septic tanks or probably get inside of a sewage drain and pick up crap and all that. I don't think many really want to do that. Now, there could be some, but in reality, there is some jobs in society that people just do not like. They don't want, but they have to do it. It has to be done. Those jobs have to be filled. In this case, that's what the Goblin Slayer has. He has a job that nobody wants because it's a job that just doesn't seem really impressive or it'll get you anywhere, but it still needs to be done. He is filling a niche that needs to be filled, and that's what's happening here. So I feel bad for the man. I legit do. They don't understand what he has to go through, what he is doing. Even though he may not be having hard as a time as someone hunting down trolls and dragons, it doesn't change the fact that he is saving a lot of lives. People that are affected every single day, and it's just brushed off. We even got to see that at the end of the first episode, that, the things that happen with the goblins and, with what they do to women, to, just, how they pillage villages and all of that, that stuff is not really talked about as much, is because people look at goblins like they're weak monsters, and just like, there's some crazier stuff out there. So yeah, episode 2 of Goblin Slayer did a fantastic job with telling us a really good story and giving us some really good world building. And he does admit something in this episode that also speaks volumes about his character, to where he's like, I don't like it when I have to do quests. I don't like it when there's goblins around. That's basically what, he says. And he prefers it to when he doesn't have to do anything. He prefers it to when there is no goblins leaving their nest and, nobody's getting attacked. So it shows that the man, even though he hates goblins and he hunts them down, he doesn't want to have to go out every day and get rid of goblins. Because if there is no goblins, then the world is a better place. That's basically what he said in that moment. And it shows also what type of person he is. That, he's not so obsessed with his job that he needs to slay goblins. He just is slaying them because it needs to be done. So yeah, I think the past to everything that happened within this episode, it was fantastic. And man, this is definitely a good series. I don't think it is like the best series of all time or anything, but it's a really good series. I think this series is being judged for the wrong reasons, and people are not really looking at the big picture here of what Goblin Slayer is about. And I feel like in due time, though, if everything continues and remains popular, I could definitely see this series becoming a fan favorite for many from 2018. But I want to end it there. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoy my content, please subscribe. If you like this video, please leave a like. And if you want to get notified for whenever I upload a video, please click the bell icon down below. And with that, Chibi out.